Every morning, the alarm rings. You get up, brush your teeth, drink the same coffee, check your phone, go to work, return, eat, sleep. Repeat. At some point, quietly and without warning, a question slips in, one that most people bury before it grows too loud. What am I even doing all this for? It's not always dramatic. Often, it arrives on a rainy Tuesday, between meetings, when laughter feels empty and success tastes dull. That strange, unsettling sense that perhaps none of this really matters. Albert Camus called it the absurd, the collision between our desperate need for meaning and a universe that offers only silence in return. But unlike many before him, Camus did not run from that silence. He did not deny it, nor despair in it. He stood still. He listened. And in that stillness, he discovered something unexpected. This video isn't about finding a higher purpose. It's not about God, destiny, or fate. It's about what happens when you realize none of that is coming, and yet you choose to live anyway. You choose joy anyway. You choose to rebel not by escaping life, but by embracing it. The question is, will you? The morning question. There's a moment in almost every life that goes unnoticed by the world but not by the soul. It doesn't come with fanfare or tragedy. It usually happens quietly while brushing your teeth, waiting at a red light, or staring at the ceiling before sleep. A question small at first, then impossibly large, begins to form. Why? Why am I doing this? Why am I working so hard, following routines, playing roles? Why does it all feel like movement without direction? You don't need to be in crisis to feel this. In fact, it often comes when life seems fine. You have a job, a relationship, a schedule. You're doing what you were told you should do. But underneath the surface, something feels missing. It's not depression. It's not even sadness. It's a kind of invisible fatigue, a quiet erosion of meaning. This feeling, so common yet so rarely spoken, is not new. It's ancient. It's the same feeling that Albert Camus recognized in the lives of ordinary people. A sense of dislocation in the middle of modern life. A suspicion that maybe the world doesn't offer what we were promised. That the rituals we repeat, education, career, family, retirement, are not ladders to a higher truth, but circles. Round and round. Sisyphus pushing his stone. Camus begins not with solutions, but with honesty. He does not dismiss the ache, nor distract from it. Instead, he invites us to look directly into it. To ask the hard question without flinching: if life has no inherent purpose, why continue living it? But, and this is key, he does not ask it as a path to despair. He asks it to clear the fog. Because only when we stop lying to ourselves can we begin to see clearly. Only when we stop pretending the noise is music can we hear the silence and decide what song we want to sing instead. You see, the real terror is not in facing the absurd. It's in avoiding it, only to one day realize we lived a life that was never truly ours. A life lived on autopilot. A borrowed life. A life without presence. So if you've ever looked in the mirror and felt like a stranger to your own reflection, you're not broken. You're awakening. You are, perhaps for the first time, asking the only question that matters: what is worth living for if nothing is guaranteed to last? And that question, that raw, uncomfortable, beautiful question, is where everything begins. But what happens after the curtain is pulled back when all meaning dissolves and nothing is left but the void. Do we collapse, or can we build something new from that emptiness? The death of certainty. For most of human history, we had a story. One story. Whether you were born in a village or a kingdom, whether your god was called Yahweh, Allah, or Zeus, life had meaning because it fit into something larger. Your suffering was a lesson. Your birth, a gift. Your death, a doorway. The world, however, chaotic, was wrapped in a divine logic. You were never alone, never adrift. Everything had a place. This is what Camus called the Age of Certainty. And it wasn't just about religion. It was about structure, stability. The comfort of knowing that pain wasn't wasted, that even heartbreak had purpose, that the tears you cried might be counted somewhere, weighed and honored by something greater than yourself. But then something happened. It didn't come all at once. It began with the telescope. Then came the microscope, the printing press, the scientific revolution. Slowly, we stopped reading the stars for prophecy and started measuring them for mass, distance, and velocity. We no longer saw the Earth as the center of a divine universe, but as a pale blue dot floating aimlessly in cold, dark space. Darwin told us we were not crafted lovingly by a creator, but descended from organisms shaped by blind, indifferent forces. The Big Bang reminded us the universe did not begin with a purpose. It simply began. And so the old story crumbled. God did not die with thunder. He faded with silence. Nietzsche saw it coming. His famous line, "God is dead," was not a celebration. It was a mourning, a warning. He knew that once faith disappeared, so would the scaffolding that held meaning in place. And when that happened, something terrifying would rush in to fill the void, nothingness. Camus was born into this silence. He grew up not with the answers, but with their absence. And unlike others who tried to stitch the old stories into new clothes, he refused. He would not lie to himself. The world no longer made sense the way it used to, and pretending otherwise was, to him, the greatest betrayal of all. So where does that leave us? We are the inheritors of a broken narrative. A generation standing between two eras, one of certainty long gone, and another of chaotic freedom yet to be mastered. And it is in this tension, this liminal space between what was and what isn't, that the absurd is born. It's not just philosophical, it's personal. You feel it when someone you love dies and no lesson follows. When you work hard, but no reward comes. When beauty exists, but no God is watching. It's the quiet panic behind the question, what now? And Camus doesn't answer with another myth. He answers with a mirror. So if the old gods have fallen and the universe remains mute, what does that make us? Abandoned or free? The silence of the universe. You look up at the stars. They shine cold and ancient, untouched by your joy or your sorrow. You whisper your questions into the night. Why am I here? Does any of this matter? But the sky doesn't answer. It never has. It simply continues vast, silent, and indifferent. This is the absurd, not chaos, not destruction, but this, the unbearable tension between our hunger for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide it. As Camus describes it, the absurd isn't something that lives outside of us. It's born in the very collision between our need for answers and the silence that greets them. We are creatures who ache for purpose. We're wired to ask. Children ask why the sky is blue. Teenagers ask who they are. Adults ask what it's all for. It's as if we're built to demand meaning, like lungs are built for air. But what happens when there is no air? When the questions echo endlessly and nothing echoes back? Most of us never look long enough to find out. We distract ourselves. We keep moving. We fill our calendars and inboxes and social feeds with noise. Not because we're busy, but because we're afraid. Afraid that if we stop, even for a moment, we'll hear that silence. The one that says, there is no grand answer. Camus never ran from that silence. He listened to it, sat in it. And what he discovered wasn't horror, it was clarity. Because here's the truth most of us resist. The universe owes us nothing. Not meaning, not fairness, not even beauty. And yet we exist. We love. We build. We hope. In spite of it all. In modern Western culture, this silence has become almost taboo. We mask it with motivational slogans, corporate visions, spiritual bypassing. We rush to fill the void with plans and goals, as if purpose can be manufactured on demand. But Camus would say, this is where most go wrong. The absurd cannot be solved. It can only be faced. It's not a puzzle to fix. It's a confrontation to endure. And in that endurance lies something sacred. Because when we stop demanding that life explain itself, when we stop trying to force the universe to justify our suffering, we're left with the most honest condition of all existence. Raw, unfiltered, mysterious. A miracle not because it has a reason, but because it doesn't. This is the starting point of true rebellion. Not against society or authority, but against the false comfort of easy answers. The absurd asks you to be brave enough to say, I don't know. And I'm still here. So if the universe is silent, if no voice is coming from the stars, what kind of voice will you become in the void? 3 escapes from the absurd. When faced with the absurd, that haunting realization that life may have no inherent meaning, most people don't stand still like Camus. They run. And the ways they run, though different on the surface, all come from the same place: fear. Fear of the void. Fear of silence. Fear that if they stop pretending, everything will collapse. Camus observed 3 main responses to the absurd, 3 psychological escapes. And while each offers temporary comfort, all come at a cost. The first is denial. The refusal to accept that life lacks built-in purpose. This is the most common and, often, the most socially accepted. People cling to religious doctrines, political ideologies, or cultural myths not out of deep belief, but because it's easier than standing in uncertainty. They accept stories not because they are convinced, but because they're afraid of what it would mean if those stories were false. This denial becomes armor, but it's armor that weighs them down. It demands blindness. It demands that they turn away from the questions that make them human. The second escape is nihilism, the dark mirror of denial. Where the first says there is meaning, nihilism says there can't be any meaning, so nothing matters. It's a seductive trap. At first, it feels honest, brutally so. But then, it hollows you. Love becomes chemical noise. Beauty, a trick of the brain. Morality, a social lie. And in this barren landscape, despair blooms. You've probably met someone who radiates this quiet hopelessness. They laugh, but their eyes stay tired. They've stopped believing anything matters, so they stop trying. Camus saw this not as clarity, but as surrender. A philosophical suicide. Then there's the third, and perhaps most insidious, escape through distraction. People drown out the absurd with noise scrolling endlessly, chasing promotions, filling every moment with stimulation. Not because they're driven, but because they're running. They travel not to explore, but to avoid stillness. They date not to connect, but to silence loneliness. They work not for passion, but for numbness. Look around, and you'll see this escape everywhere in the eyes of someone who's successful, yet deeply empty inside. These 3 paths: denial, nihilism, distraction, they all share one thing: they avoid looking the absurd in the eye. They delay the confrontation, but the price of avoidance is authenticity. You may feel safe, but you are not free. You're still haunted by the question you refuse to ask: what if none of this was ever meant to mean anything? Camus rejected all 3. He didn't deny, despair, or distract. He chose a 4th path. A path that begins where most turn back. But what does that path look like? And how can you walk it without falling into madness or apathy? Embracing the absurd. Camus did not run from the absurd, he walked into it. Fully conscious. Empty-handed. Without illusions. And in doing so, he discovered the very thing most people miss, that the absurd is not a problem to be solved. It's a reality to be lived. He called it revolt, but not the kind that raises fists or starts revolutions. This revolt is quiet, inner. It's the act of saying, yes, the universe is indifferent. Yes, life has no given purpose. But I will live anyway. That simple declaration changes everything. Because in that moment, when you stop asking the world to justify itself, you gain something extraordinary: freedom. Not the shallow freedom sold in advertisements, but the raw, terrifying, exhilarating freedom of being alive without a script. of choosing how to live without waiting for someone or something to give you permission. Camus puts it beautifully. The absurd man is he who is aware of this confrontation and lives in it. Not denying it, not running from it, living in it. Imagine this. A man stands at the edge of a cliff, staring into a bottomless void. Most people would step back in fear or jump in despair. But the absurd hero does neither. He simply lights a cigarette, looks at the stars, and begins to dance. Not because it makes sense, not because someone told him to, but because dancing is worth doing even in the face of death. This is the paradox that Camus invites us to embody, to fully accept the meaninglessness of life, and yet to live it with passion, joy, and presence. Not as an escape, but as a form of defiance. A rebellion of joy against a silent cosmos. And this rebellion is not grand or loud. It happens in the smallest acts, making art that no one may ever see, loving someone even though all things fade, laughing while knowing that sorrow will return. These are the acts of the absurd hero, not because they solve the problem of life, but because they celebrate it, in spite of it. So what does it mean to embrace the absurd? It means to look life squarely in the face and say, I know you offer me no guarantees, and I will live you fully anyway. It means to stop searching for answers and start creating your own questions. It means to stop waiting for meaning and start making beauty. It means to be awake. Completely awake. Even when it hurts. And maybe that's what real courage looks like, not believing that everything happens for a reason, but continuing anyway, without needing one. So what happens when you stop asking the universe for a purpose and start asking yourself instead? The Myth of Sisyphus Rewritten. There's an ancient Greek myth you've probably heard before, the story of Sisyphus. A clever king who defied the gods, tricked death, and tried to escape his mortal fate. For his rebellion, he was condemned to a punishment more cruel than pain, pointlessness. Every day, Sisyphus must push a massive boulder up a mountain. And every day, just before he reaches the top, it slips from his grasp and tumbles all the way back down. No ending. No victory. Just repetition. Forever. To most, this is a tragedy. A metaphor for the futility of life. You wake, work, strive, love, suffer, and in the end, the boulder falls. Your efforts erased. Your name forgotten. No matter how high you climb, gravity always wins. But Camus saw something different. Something no one else did. He asked a question that flips the entire story on its head. What if Sisyphus is not suffering? What if Sisyphus is free? It sounds insane until you understand what Camus meant. The gods could curse Sisyphus with endless labor. But they couldn't control his mind. They couldn't dictate his attitude. And the moment Sisyphus accepts the absurdity of his fate, not with resignation, but with awareness, he robs the gods of their power. The punishment only works if he resists it, if he yearns for meaning that will never come. But if he lets go of that yearning, if he embraces the absurd task and finds joy in the doing itself, then the curse is broken. Camus writes, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Not because the task has changed, but because he has. That single line is not just poetic. It is revolutionary. It says, the weight of life cannot crush you if you stop needing it to lift you. That meaninglessness is not a prison unless you believe it is. That even in the repetition, the routine, the grind, you can find freedom. Not by changing the task, but by changing how you meet it. Sisyphus becomes a symbol of all of us. The workers, the parents, the artists, the lovers who rise each day to push their boulders with no guarantees, no cosmic applause, no eternal reward. And yet, we do it anyway. Why? Because we choose to. That is the power Camus saw. The quiet, defiant smile of a man walking back down the mountain, not broken, but unshaken. And perhaps the most dangerous person in the universe is not the one who demands answers, but the one who no longer needs them. So the boulder rolls back. You're standing at the bottom again. The mountain looms. The question is, will you push it, and can you smile while doing so? The birth of freedom. When you stop asking, "What's the point?" and instead begin asking, "What will I do anyway?" You are no longer a prisoner of the absurd, you are its master. Because in that moment, something extraordinary is born: freedom. Not the kind of freedom promised in slogans or sold in advertisements, but the raw existential freedom that comes when no one, no God, no fate, no philosophy tells you who to be. You are no longer living out a script. You are writing it. Every day, every breath. Camus believed this was the moment true life begins. Not when we find a purpose handed down from above, but when we realize we don't need one. When we stop being puppets of invisible meanings and begin becoming authors of visible choices. And this kind of freedom is not easy. It comes with no map, no guarantees, no applause, just space. Space to move, to fall, to rise again. Think about it. If life came with a built-in purpose, if the universe had written the rules in advance, then we'd be actors in someone else's play. Even if it was a kind God, even if the meaning was beautiful, it wouldn't be ours. But when the meaning is absent, when the silence is real, then every act becomes sacred. Not because it was preordained, but because you chose it. This is what Camus means by revolt, not shouting into the void, but laughing inside it. Not waiting for destiny, but creating experience. Not proving something to the universe, but discovering what makes you come alive. And here's the beauty. Once you realize you are free, you begin to notice others who are too. The artist who creates even when no one watches. The parent who sacrifices not because they'll be rewarded, but because they choose to love. The traveler who wanders not to escape, but to be present. The builder, the dreamer, the ordinary rebel who wakes each day and says, "I will live fully just because I can." These are the heroes of the absurd. Not saints, not sages. Just humans who have stopped pretending and started living. Their lives may look quiet from the outside, but inside they burn with a kind of fire that cannot be explained, only felt. So no, there may be no cosmic meaning waiting for you. But there is something else. There is freedom. And with that freedom, there comes responsibility. To act, to create, to love. Not because it all lasts, but because you are here now, and that's enough. So if you are no longer bound by meaning, no longer imprisoned by expectation, what will you do with your freedom? Living the absurd life. Camus was not just a philosopher, he was a practitioner. He didn't write about the absurd so you could sit in a room and think about it. He wrote so you could live it. Fully. Fiercely. Without apology. So how do you live the absurd life? Not in theory. In practice. What does it actually look like to wake up every morning and face a universe that offers no answers yet still choose to dance? Camus offers us 3 principles. 3 ways to live, not despite the absurd, but through it. First, act without overthinking. Most people wait for the right moment. They wait until they're sure. Until the plan is perfect. Until meaning is clear. But the absurd reminds us there may never be a perfect moment. There may never be clarity. The universe does not send signs. So act anyway. Start the business. Write the poem. Say the words. Move toward what matters to you, not because it's guaranteed to succeed, but because doing it is the revolt. You don't need permission. You need courage. Second, experience instead of explaining. Modern life is obsessed with reasons. Why do you love this person? Why pursue that dream? Why take that risk? But once you embrace the absurd, you stop asking why and start asking why not. You realize that joy, beauty, intimacy, they don't need justification. They are enough. When you laugh, even in the face of death, that is a victory. When you love, even knowing it will end, that is rebellion. When you create, knowing it may be forgotten, that is freedom. The act itself becomes the point. Third, revolt with joy. This is Camus' most radical idea. Joy is a form of resistance. In a world without guarantees, where nothing lasts, every moment of sincere joy becomes sacred. It is not naive. It is not foolish. It is strength. Because to laugh without needing a reason, to love without knowing the outcome, to show up every day and still choose to try, that is power. That is the absurd life, lived honestly. And the best part? No one can take it from you. Not failure. Not aging. Not even death. Because the absurd hero does not live for outcomes. They live for the flame itself. So what does this mean for you? It means you don't have to figure it all out. You don't have to justify your life to some invisible jury. You don't need to chase purpose like it's hiding in the next job, the next lover, the next city. It's already here. It's in the act of choosing. The quiet defiance of living fully, even when nothing promises to last. So today, instead of asking what's the meaning, what if you asked what's worth doing anyway? Joy as revolt. Joy. It sounds soft, light, easy. But in the world of Camus, joy is not soft, it's defiance. It's the rebel's flame. The smile that refuses to vanish even when the gods go silent. Because once you've faced the absurd, once you've looked into the void and heard no answer, the decision to laugh is no longer casual. It becomes sacred, a kind of protest. A radiant yes hurled into the face of nothingness. Camus believed that every moment of genuine joy is a declaration. I see the world for what it is, and I choose to love it anyway. That's not naivety. That's clarity turned into courage. This is why he wrote that one must imagine Sisyphus happy. Because that image of a man pushing a boulder that will always fall, and still choosing to smile, is the most powerful image of freedom he could conceive. It's not the joy of ignorance. It's the joy of rebellion. Look around in today's world, and you'll see people unconsciously embodying this spirit. The young woman dancing barefoot in her living room, even though she just lost her job. The single father telling jokes to his daughter in a crumbling apartment, even though rent is overdue. The artist painting vivid colors on gray city walls, knowing no one may ever pay attention. They are not escaping reality. They are rewriting it. They are saying, this may not make sense. This may not last. But while I breathe, I will choose beauty. In modern Western culture, we often equate joy with comfort, security, achievement. But Camus flips that entirely. For him, joy is most potent when there's no reason for it. When everything tells you to despair and you choose to laugh instead. Even absurdist humor, so prevalent among younger generations, the existential memes, the dark jokes, the ironic detachment, it all reflects a silent revolt. Beneath the absurdity is a cry, we see the truth. And we're still here. To find joy in an indifferent universe is to seize back authorship of your life. It's to declare, you may not care, Cosmos. But I do. It's not about denying pain. It's about refusing to let pain write the final chapter. That's why joy, in Camus's philosophy, is not a distraction, it's resistance. Not a privilege, it's a right. And perhaps, even more radically, it's a duty. A duty to ourselves. To our brief, precious, unpredictable existence. Because if we must push the boulder anyway, why not sing on the way up? So the question isn't how can I find joy in this meaningless world? It's what if joy is the way I fight back? The power to choose. From the first moment we opened our eyes, the world began whispering, here's what life means. Here's what you must become. Here's how you find value. And we believed it. We searched for meaning in careers, in relationships, in belief systems handed down like inheritance. We chased purpose, like it was a hidden treasure buried somewhere out there, if only we looked hard enough. But Camus came along and said, what if there is no treasure? What if the map is blank? And instead of despairing, he smiled. Because in that terrifying possibility lies our greatest power, the power to choose. If life does not come with a pre-written script, then every action you take is an act of authorship. Every word you speak, every kindness you offer, every risk you take, it all becomes meaning because you chose it. You're not here to find your place in some divine plan. You're here to write your own plan, to build your own purpose, to love on your own terms, not because someone told you it's important, but because you feel it is. That is the core of Camus' message. Not that nothing matters, but that nothing is guaranteed to matter, and so everything you do by choice becomes sacred. It's easy to fall back into the comfort of borrowed meaning. Easy to wait for the world to give you a reason. But you don't need permission to live fully. You never did. You are Sisyphus, yes. The mountain is yours. The boulder is real. And it will fall, again and again. But you are also the one who decides how to walk back down. You can curse the gods. Or you can smile. You can ask, why me? Or you can ask, why not? You can live waiting for answers. Or you can live asking better questions. You can spend your life searching for meaning. Or you can create moments that feel meaningful, right now, for no reason other than you are alive and aware. This is not a shallow optimism. It's not about pretending things are okay. It's about facing the void, embracing the absurd, and saying, I will live anyway. Not in spite of the meaninglessness, but because of it. And in that act, you become free. Camus never asked us to be perfect. He never promised that this would be easy, but he offered something far more real, a path of honest rebellion, quiet joy, and chosen life. So as you return to your mountain, whatever your boulder may be, ask yourself, what will I choose now that nothing is chosen for me? And if that question stirs something in you, then you've already begun.